and welcome to episode 93 of Toke Signals TV, where we bring you the biggest in cannabis and hemp news stories every week. I'm Steve Elliott, the editor at tokesignals.com, and I'll be guiding you through the news. Let's take a look at some goodies first. Our Toke Signals Bud Pick of the Week. Here's some Blue Dream at 23.4% THC. I found this at a recreational marijuana store in Bremerton, Washington called Highway 420. Let's do the news now, shall we? In the United States, a study revealed this week that medical marijuana is helping to overcome painkiller abuse and reduce deaths. States with medical marijuana have seen the number of admissions to drug rehab facilities for pain medication and opioid overdoses decrease by 15% and 16% respectively, according to a new paper from the National Bureau of Economic Research. Our findings suggest that providing broader access to medical marijuana may have the potential benefit of reducing abuse of highly addictive painkillers, the researchers concluded. Now, other studies have examined the relationship between legal cannabis use and opioid overdose rates, but this is the first study to track addiction to opioids as well. The paper builds on previous work showing that states with medical marijuana laws on the books saw 24.8% fewer deaths from painkiller overdoses compared to states that didn't have such laws. But the new paper's findings are even more compelling. It uses more data, and the authors drew on a broader range of statistical methods to test the validity of their data. Researchers looked at the number of patients admitted to centers in the United States for painkiller addiction from 1992 to 2013, opioid-related deaths from 1999 to 2013, and the amount of prescription opioids legally sold in each state from 2000 to 2011. What they found is that in states with medical marijuana dispensaries, opioid painkillers are being prescribed at similar rates as in states without dispensaries. That suggests that most of the reductions in addiction and overdoses in medical marijuana states result from patients using cannabis rather than opioid painkillers to reduce their pain. We find no impact of medical marijuana laws more broadly. The mitigating effect of medical marijuana laws is specific to states that permit dispensaries, the researchers wrote. Only states with laws protecting medicinal cannabis dispensaries saw these decreases. They found that the presence of marijuana dispensaries was associated with a 15 to 35% decrease in substance abuse admissions, with opiate overdose deaths decreasing by a similar amount. About 2.1 million people suffered from opioid substance abuse disorders in the United States in 2012. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention call it an epidemic. Prescription painkillers killed more than 16,000 people in 2013, according to the CDC. That's more people than suicide, guns, or car crashes. While opioid painkillers such as OxyContin, Vicodin, and Percocet can cause individuals to stop breathing if they overdose, it is impossible to fatally overdose on cannabis. A federal appeals court this week in the United States says marijuana businesses cannot deduct expenses. In a huge blow to the newly legal marijuana industry, the IRS has convinced the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals that marijuana dispensaries can't deduct business expenses and must pay taxes on 100% of their gross income. Almost every business in the United States pays taxes only on net profits after expenses. But marijuana businesses are different. They got to pay taxes on gross profits, according to a Ninth Circuit federal court decision on Thursday. The court affirmed that the Internal Revenue Service's Section 280E prevents a San Francisco medical marijuana dispensary from deducting ordinary or necessary business expenses because its vapor room is a trade or business consisting of trafficking in controlled substances prohibited by federal law. The huge tax revenues suggested by many observers and lawmakers could evaporate quickly as businesses go bankrupt after the decision on the case, made on appeal from a U.S. tax court decision. Washington State collected about $65 million in taxes on the first year of recreational marijuana sales, while Colorado collected a reported $43 million. The Ninth Circuit upheld the tax court ruling that Section 280E prevents legal marijuana businesses from deducting ordinary business expenses. Under federal tax law, the vapor room is a business trafficking in a Schedule I controlled substance, prohibited by federal law. Even legal marijuana businesses will continue to have major federal income tax problems under the new ruling. In a classic catch-22, they face charges of tax evasion if they don't report their income, and they risk criminal prosecution if they do. The most imminent risk of all is being bankrupted by their IRS tax bill. Section 280E, passed by Congress, quote, to fight drug dealers back in 1982, prohibits deductions. The proposed Marijuana Tax Equity Act from 2013 would end the federal prohibition on marijuana and allow it to be taxed at a whopping 50%. The bill would impose, yes, a 50% excise tax on cannabis sales, plus an annual occupation tax on workers in the field of legal marijuana. But even that would probably be an improvement over what currently amounts to a tax on gross revenues, according to many observers. In Oregon this week, it was announced that travelers can fly with recreational marijuana. Travelers at Portland International Airport in Oregon can legally board airplanes with up to an ounce of pot for in-state flights under the state's new law legalizing recreational cannabis. The Transportation Security Administration is not focused on finding marijuana, but rather on security and safety issues, according to airport officials. If TSA agents at Portland International Airport find marijuana, local police will be notified to ensure that it is within the legal weight limit, up to an ounce. The passenger is of legal age, at least 21, and the boarding pass indicates an in-state flight in Oregon. If all of that checks out, the passenger is free to go. Traveling across state lines with marijuana is still a federal crime, said Steve Johnson of the Port of Portland. However, if someone is flying within the state to another destination in the state, traveling with recreational marijuana is allowable if they meet all the legal requirements. Passengers with marijuana who don't meet the legal requirements will be given the option to store the cannabis in a safe place, like a car, give it to someone 21 or older who is not traveling, or surrender it to law enforcement to be destroyed. Yeah, right, probably a joint at the time. Oregon's legalization law, which took effect July the 1st, prohibits taking weed out of the state since it's still illegal federally. That includes taking it across the state line to Washington, where it's also legal. Yet another scientific study this week debunks the marijuana gateway theory. Yes, another study has been added to the mountain of evidence debunking the so-called gateway theory, which maintains that marijuana use leads to harder drugs. Teens instead smoke cannabis for very specific reasons, researchers report in the new study, and it is those same reasons which sometimes prompt them to try other drugs. Youths who use marijuana because they are bored, for example, are more likely to also use cocaine, while kids using weed to achieve insight or understanding are more likely to try psilocybin mushrooms, according to the findings, recently published in the American Journal of Drug and Alcohol Abuse. We found that marijuana use within itself wasn't a risk factor for use of other drugs, said lead author Joseph Palomar, assistant professor in the Department of Population Health at New York University's Langone Medical Center. People who do generally use marijuana before other drugs, but that doesn't mean marijuana is a cause of using those other drugs, he said. The researchers based their conclusions on data gathered from monitoring the future, an ongoing study of the behaviors of American high school students. About 15,000 high school seniors are questioned each year for that. The analysis focused on high school seniors surveyed between 2000 and 2010 who had reported using cannabis within the past year. Researchers also reported the teens' self-reported use of 8 other illegal drugs, including powder cocaine, crack, heroin, LSD, other psychedelics, amphetamines, tranquilizers, and other narcotics. Nearly a third of the teens said they used marijuana to address boredom. Those teens were 43% more likely to try cocaine and 56% more likely to try a psychedelic drug other than LSD, the researchers found. About a fifth of them said they used cannabis to achieve insight or understanding, and this reason correlated with being 51% more likely to try a psychedelic other than LSD. Teens who said they used cannabis to experiment actually had a decreased risk of using any of the 8 other drugs, researchers found. Palomar said this indicates that teens who say they're trying cannabis just to try it, rather than to meet some other need, are often at low risk for moving on to other substances. Most teens who use marijuana don't progress to use of other drugs, and we believe this is evidenced in part by the fact that nearly 2/3 of these marijuana-using teens did not report use of any of the other illicit drugs we examined, he said. We need to examine the reasons why people use the drives that lead people to use, Palomar said. The majority of adults in the United States have at least tried marijuana, and we know the majority has never gone on to use another drug. yet we tend to treat all drug use as pathological. In Colorado this week, the marijuana tax for their schools hit a record and exceeded the entire total for 2014. Just released marijuana tax data from the Colorado Department of Revenue showed that schools in the state received more money from the state's cannabis excise tax in the first 5 months of 2015 than they did all year in 2014. It sounds very encouraging, said State Senator Pat Stedman. Voters wanted the school capital construction program to benefit, and despite some bumps in the road at the beginning, it looks like what was intended is coming to fruition. Recreational marijuana is taxed 3 ways in Colorado: the standard 2.9% sales tax, a special 10% special cannabis sales tax, and a 15% excise tax on wholesale marijuana transfers. The excise tax money grew from $2.5 million in March to $3.5 million in May. It brought in $13.6 million through May 2015, more than the $13.3 million it drew in all of 2014. The 2 main reasons for the jump are more marijuana stores opening and a one-time tax-exempt transfer which benefited the shops. Recreational marijuana sales stayed roughly the same in Colorado between March and May, totaling $42.4 million in March and $42.5 million in May. May's medical cannabis sales in Colorado totaled $32.4 million, their highest since October 2014. Conservative estimates place the total school tax collections for all of 2015 between $25 million and $30 million in Colorado. But if future months equal May's pace, the tax will raise more than $38 million this year. In Italy this week, the parliament looked at marijuana legalization. A proposal to legalize the recreational use of cannabis has been introduced in the Italian parliament and has gained the support of more than 200 lawmakers there. The Intergruppo Parlamentare Cannabis Legale, a cross-party committee of lawmakers, agreed on a provisional text to legalize the consumption, growing, production, and sale of cannabis under certain conditions. The text was signed by 218 members of parliament, and not just the usual backers of such measures. The bill would make it legal to possess up to 15 grams of marijuana, to cultivate up to 5 plants, and to smoke it in private, and would allow its sale in government-licensed shops. Cannabis clubs with a maximum of 50 people could cultivate marijuana as a group and then share the harvest, with strict prohibitions on selling it to the general public. Sponsored by Benedetto della Vedova, a junior minister of foreign affairs, the bill was supported by 217 other members of Italy's 2 chambers of parliament, which have together more than 900 lawmakers. The group's manifesto states, "We think that in Europe and in Italy, it makes sense to work to follow the example of countries that first switched to a system of full legal regulation of the production, sale, and consumption of cannabis, adapting its features to our social and legal context." Della Vedova is a former member of the Radical Party, a small libertarian group which favors the decriminalization of soft drugs. He said the bill would weaken drug-dealing mafias and reduce the backlog of trials which clogged Italy's slow-moving tribunals. In Hawaii this week, some good news as the governor signed a bill legalizing medical marijuana dispensaries. Hawaii Governor David Ige on Wednesday signed House Bill 321, legalizing and establishing a system of medical marijuana dispensaries in the state. Medical marijuana has been legal in Hawaii for 15 years, but patients haven't had an official place to buy their medicine. Instead, they had to grow their own cannabis or had a caretaker do it for them, or depend on the black market. The bill will also stop counties from enacting zoning regulations that discriminate against licensed dispensaries and marijuana production centers. I support the establishment of dispensaries to ensure that qualified patients can legally and safely access medical marijuana, the governor said when he signed the bill. We know that our challenge going forward will be to adopt rules that are fair, cost-effective, and easy to monitor. The bill sets a timeline, the governor said. We will make a good faith effort to create a fair process that will help the people most in need. HB 321, now Act 241, creates a framework for a dispensary system that would allow up to 16 dispensaries statewide by July 15, 2016. Under the new law, qualified patients and primary caregivers, along with employees of medical marijuana production centers and dispensaries, will be allowed to legally transport cannabis in any public place under certain conditions. Three licenses will be issued on Oahu, with 2 dispensary licenses issued each in Hawaii County and Maui County. Only one company will receive a license to grow and distribute marijuana on Kauai. The law allows for additional licenses to be distributed as early as October 2017. While the new law doesn't specify what medical marijuana will cost in Hawaii, DOH Director of Communications Janice Okubo said it's likely the department will allow market forces to work as much as possible, since only 8 licenses will initially be distributed. Some experts predict medical marijuana flowers will cost between $200 and $300 an ounce in Hawaii. According to Forbes magazine, the average price for black market marijuana in Hawaii is $307 an ounce. After the Department of Health completes its rulemaking process, the agency will start accepting applications for licenses on January 11, 2016, and the licensees will be announced in April 2016. The Medical Cannabis Coalition of Hawaii called the signing of Act 241 the single greatest leap forward for Hawaii's medical marijuana program since its inception in 2000. Before we go this week, let me direct your attention to a must-read article on tokesignals.com. It's by our friend activist Kirk Ludden, and it is Washington State Medical Marijuana Patients to Rally, July 24th. It's something of a last-ditch attempt to stop the implementation of SB 5052. A legal challenge is being mounted to this new law, which will basically destroy medical marijuana as we know it in Washington. So if you are interested in fighting against that, show up in Olympia, July 24th. And I'll see you there. Until next time, stay lifted.